Roll for Crit is brought to you by our Patreon supporters. Come roll with us at patreon.com/rollforcrit. We're going dungeon crawling today on Roll for Crit as we give you our Kickstarter preview for the game called Dealing Dungeons. In this one, all players are adventurers in their own personal dungeon, trying to make their way through, fighting against monsters and grabbing loot, trying to get to that end boss before any other player.
There are many game modes, but the standard mode will have each player building their own dungeon. And there will be a specific distance apart because table space actually matters in this game. So this is just an example, not what the actual distance might be, depending on your player count in game. Now, the whole idea of the game is you're going to try to get through your own dungeon faster than other players, level up the quickest, and take out the final boss to get all that delicious loot. You know, what dungeons are supposed to be for. On your turn, while there are multiple actions you may be dealing with, more often than not, what you'll want to do is to build. This is building out your dungeon in order for you to fill it out and find that end loot tile. Now, you'll be given some cards at the beginning of the game, and you'll draw one from that deck. This will have a room with a certain number of doors, and you have to match it to one of the doors in your own room. So in this case, the entranceway. Pretty simple, just like that. After you've legally placed your room, you will move into that room in which you will have an encounter, but we'll get back to that in a second. Now, as you explore, you'll be drawing more cards that can be placed horizontally or vertically as long as it's legal, but you may come across a dead end. If you encounter a dead end, on your next turn, you have two options. One, if there is another room in your labyrinth of a dungeon that is still open, you can move to that room for your action on that turn. But let's say that door did not exist. What you can do is look for a secret door. Pretty much, this is a way for you to not get trapped forever, and it's pretty much taking your turn to just add another door. But let's actually get to what the big meat of the game is and those encounters. Whenever you enter a room, you're supposed to draw from the encounter deck. These can be traps or nothing, but more often than not, it's monsters. Monsters will look like these with a cute little art and name, but the two important things on the bottom are what you're going to be worried about. They have an attack stat and a defense stat, and sometimes showing range. What this means is when you encounter them, you have three options. You can fight back right away, you can try to defend and maybe parry back later, or you can run away. Now, running away is the simplest. That's leaving the room and going to another place. Simple as that. But let's say you didn't want to run away just yet. Let's go over defending first. When you defend, you will roll one die, and you will try to match or beat that value there. There are ways for you to get bonuses. If you roll lower, like in this case, you'll take some damage. Now, combat, on the other hand, is pretty similar, except you'll be rolling two dice, and you will try to match or beat, though matching just means nothing happens. In this case, you beat it, and you kill it. Almost everything only has one life, so pretty easy to take it out. By taking a card, you will earn experience equal to its attack value. You'll also get the chance to draw some loot. Usually it's going to be some coins, but there are also some chance of some items in there as well. The loot and experience are not something for you to ignore because you're going to need these things if you are able to take on that final boss.
Once you have gone through all 10 cards in your deck and you have completely filled out your dungeon, then you will get to the last card of your deck, which is your treasure room. That card will be placed, and you're also going to draw a random end boss that you're going to have to defeat in order to win. These are a lot like the monsters that you'll be encountering in the rest of the dungeon, but they are stronger, and they're going to take more effort to defeat. You can see that they have a health value as well as a defense value, and defending and running work the same way as they do with normal monsters. However, attacking them is a little different. For their attack numbers, the player to your left is going to be rolling 3 dice, and the combined result of that roll is what you're going to be competing against with your own 2 dice, adding any bonuses as you normally would during any other combat. They also have their own special abilities that will trigger. For instance, you can see this young dragon has an ability where at the end of your turn, you have to roll a d6, and if you get a result of a 4, you take a damage because it breathes fire on you. Variety of different bosses that you might face. Some of these are Kickstarter exclusive, so you should look at the page to see exactly what they have going for them, but they all have different abilities, different strength levels that you're going to have to worry about. The number in the heart is the number of times you need to successfully fight the monster in order to defeat it. In order to face that final boss, you're going to want to gain levels and experience and power yourself up a little bit so you can make sure you can actually take it on. That takes us back to these encounter cards. Each one has a fight value that doubles as an experience value. And at the end of each of your turns, you can trade in some experience for a benefit. For instance, you could trade in 7 to get yourself a life token back if you have taken some damage previously. Or if you have enough that add up to 15, trade all of those in and level up. Slide your card down just like this, and you're going to unlock some kind of a new ability or an increase to your strength or defense, depends on the character you're using, that will hopefully help you become more capable. There are a lot of different characters you can play as, and each one has their own different abilities as they level up. Some of them will roll dice and get certain benefits depending on what they happen to roll. Some of them, like the ranger here, have range, which allow them to attack enemies from a distance away instead of having to be in the same room with them, which is usually safer unless that enemy has a ranged ability, meaning they can hit you back. If you happen to lose all of your life points, then your character dies. You're going to pick a brand new one, put them back at the start of your dungeon. The cards will stay in place, but all the encounters are going to refresh. So you really want to be careful of that happening and maybe make your path a little easier to get through just in case it occurs. Like we said, throughout the game, you're going to be gaining loot cards. That's what you're trying to go for in order to win. Some of them will be gold. That's just worth points. Some of them you might find a healing potion. You'll be able to trade that in to heal yourself. You might even find items that you can equip in your hand. If they have this hand icon, you can hold one of those at a time. This dagger of slaying here gives +1 to combat and defense, so they can have all kinds of different beneficial effects that you're going to want to be looking for. And at the end of the game, they're going to be worth a certain amount of points, and you're going to add that to everything else that you've got in your loot, and whoever has the most from all their loot wins.
Well, you've seen plenty of games going into a dungeon, and you just make room for whatever the dungeon's supposed to be the shape of. But this one, because you're crafting it, and table space matters, I sort of like how you're like, I could head that way, but there's the edge of the table. And I just imagine, like, if you wanted to play a harder game, you have like just a little itty bitty coffee table.
Yes, yeah, you can certainly change the area that you have available to suit your needs. It almost has a feel a little bit in that sense of like a traditional miniatures game where you're measuring out space. And we didn't really show it in the overhead too much, but you're not allowed to intersect with other players' dungeons either. So you can run into trouble if you're building out too far away or too close to them or just only in a straight line or something like that. It really does matter how you lay it out, even though those cards they're all the same except just doors are in different places. And depending on how if you put them in portrait mode or landscape mode per se, you can block some of those passages off, which is dangerous. I know I ran into a dead end when we were playing and I had to move all the way back. And that can be a big deal because in this game, you are racing every other player in your own dungeon. So running into a dead end will cost you a whole turn. Because you're going to have to move to a different card. So it is very important. You have to be really careful and try to plan ahead, not knowing what's in your deck necessarily, because they are going to be random. Try to plan and make sure you have some alternate exits.
I also want to point out that there is a lot of this will come down to those dice, but I feel whether you do the defending or the attacking, it doesn't feel too impossible. And if you defend, you get a bonus on your next roll. So if that attack value is a little high, you can defend to pretty much take a turn to sort of strengthen yourself up. In essence, you're sort of countering their attack. Any kind of bonuses always help you feel better. If sure, I need an 8, it's possible, but that +2 will make me feel a lot better.
Yeah, and it comes back again to the issue of basically how much time do I have? Is it worth it for me to sit here for a turn and build up to get a better chance? Or should I just risk it and go for it even though the odds aren't that great? Or should I just run away and come back later after I've built up some more levels and things? And you kind of saw some of it also in the overhead video, but there are a lot of different characters. There's also going to be some special stretch goal characters. You have to go to the Kickstarter page to see what else they have in store. But they have very different types of abilities. All the different fantasy tropes and classes that you would think of pretty much are included there, and then some. So depending on which characters you pick, you may have very different strategies. You might be going for more ranged attacks, if you have someone who can do that, or you might just be running up in their face and whacking them as hard as you can.
I really do love those level up because at first, when we first saw our very first game, we chose the Ranger and Barbarian. Is it Barbarian?
Yeah, he's the
I
barbarian.
mixed up because there are some like slight differences with some of the classes. And it was like +1 range, +1 combat. I'm like, okay, we're pretty close on what we do. But leveling up really adds a lot of weird, fun, like powers and what's going on that I really enjoy and make sure that at the very least for the pace this game takes, it's like, all right, next time I'm going to try a different one. It doesn't just feel like there's 4 options. There's a lot, and that's not including stretch goals.
Maybe even within the same game, you'll try a different one if you
That's
end
true.
up dying.
I completely forgot that's a thing.
Yeah, it is.
I should know. I died quite a bit.
Yeah, you could definitely die in this one. This is absolutely a quicker paced, lighter sort of card game, and there are definitely going to be some turns where you might draw a card that just doesn't suit what you're trying to go for. You might not get the health you're looking for. You might not roll the dice you want to roll. You might roll one like a trap card and you'll just lose a turn. So you do have to be prepared for that. It's meant to be a quicker, more lighthearted, not something that you're taking super seriously, but there are going to be moments where you do have to strategize and plan. A lot of it is that kind of risk management of knowing there's a chance that you could come across those lose a turn cards. And because of that, you've got to try to be extra efficient in another area so that you don't fall too far behind the other players. Now, what we talked about in today's video was the standard mode of the game, and most of those rules are in place for every other mode as well, but there are some different ways that you can play this. The standard mode, in fact, can be played as a solo game as well, first of all, so if you don't want to have to worry about other players or what they're doing, you can just delve into your own dungeon all by yourself. Then there's a co-op mode, so you can work together with other players, and in this one, you're actually building a dungeon all together from your different decks. And then there's the chaos mode, which is competitive, but now you are actually building each other's dungeons. So you can try to thwart other players by placing cards in ways that are not so favorable to them. So there are a few different ways to try this one out, whether you like competitive or co-op or solo. There are some different options for you there.
For a quick game that still has a fun dungeon crawl aspect to it, it's one to check out if you're into that and you love that just amount of that right randomness so you don't know how the next game's going to play.
Yeah, you'll definitely have a lot of variation in which cards come out and what your dungeons are going to look like. And again, lots of different bosses for the end of the game with different powerful abilities and different characters and loot items that you can equip. Check out the Kickstarter page because you're going to see all that stuff in maybe a little bit more detail, see what kind of unlockables they have, special editions and everything like that. The game is called Dealing Dungeons, and our link to the campaign will be in the description down below. You can decide if you want to back it or not and let us know in the comments as well what you think of Dungeons and the dealing thereof. Until next time, I'm Jonathan.
I'm Will.
And this was Roll for Crit. Here's an idea. Support our Patreon or like and subscribe to this channel for more.
Subscribing gives you a +2 to your charisma stat.